Google just announced their long-awaited Gemini family of transformer models last night, and the AI nerds have gone crazy. Many people are already calling it a GPT killer, simply based on the report published by Google and also Google's demo videos, which I have to say were quite impressive. Our lab has spent all day running a Gemini versus GPT-4 bake-off. We kicked the tires on Gemini Pro and also replicated tests from Google's Gemini report on OpenAI's GPT-4 model. I have to say, I was quite surprised by our findings. Who won in our bake-off? Let's find out. As a structure for our bake-off, what we did was to go through Google's DeepMind Gemini report that just came out, looked at all the key features, then tested OpenAI's GPT-4 against the same tests to see how they performed. And here are the results. Before we go into the test, let's just have a quick look at Gemini's family of models. They announced 3 variants, Ultra being the top-end version, Nano being a very efficient version that you can run on your phone, and then Pro is somewhere in the middle. And the way they put it is that for most tasks, people will be using Pro, and only for the most complex ones will they need to go to Ultra. And they have released Pro in their Bard interface. And actually, when you look at Bard, it's really hard to tell whether the underlying model is the previous version, which is Palm, or whether it is this Gemini model. You can get a sense of what is the underlying foundation model by asking Bard whether it is Palm or Gemini. And if it is Palm, it will say that it's Palm. If it's Gemini, it might say that it's not allowed to answer that question. And it's not available across all locations yet. We managed to get access to it by proxying over to San Francisco. It didn't work even from LA. One of the fundamental architectural improvements stated in the report is that it is a natively multimodal model, as opposed to being an ensemble of different models that have been packaged behind one user interface. It says that's really good at having interleaved sequences of text, images, audio, and video. So without further ado, let's go into the tests. Each of these vertical columns is a type of test, and we've pasted in either the results from the Gemini report or directly from testing Gemini Pro, and also, where available, the same results on GPT-4. We've tested it on cross-modal reasoning with math questions, multilingual capability, benchmarks, a context window, image understanding through a number of different tests that we've designed, as well as one that is in the research report, audio and video understanding, image generation interleaved with text, modality combination, and the user interface. And finally, we're going to have a scorecard where we're going to find out who won. Let's start with this first one. This was one of the first tests talked about in the Gemini report. They prompted Gemini with a math question. It says, here's a solution to a physics problem by a student. Question 23. A skier slides down the frictionless slope as shown. What is the skier's speed at the bottom? And here in pretty messy handwriting is the student's answer. In the prompt, we asked Gemini to try to reason about the question step by step. So we're basically prompting it to do chain of thought reasoning. Did the student get the correct answer? If the solution is wrong, please explain what's wrong and solve the problem. Make sure to use LaTeX for math. So this is a type of code for inputting mathematical equations, and round off the final answer to 2 decimal places. Google is showing off Gemini's response here, which is the student did not get the correct answer. The student made a mistake in the calculation of the potential energy at the start of the slope. The potential energy at the start is given by mgh, where m is the mass of the skier, g is the acceleration due to gravity, and h is the height of the slope. The student used the length of the slope instead of height. So you can see here the student wrote E equals mgl, when in fact it should be E equals mgh. So the correct solution is blah, blah, blah. So it has only potential energy, and then it works through the math step by step, and at the end comes out with the number of 28.01. If we run the same question through ChatGPT 4, you will find that it's actually performed really well. So the student solution is incorrect, and it highlights the error lies in the length of the slope L instead of the vertical height. So it's spot on within the second sentence of highlighting what the student got wrong. And similar to Gemini, it was able to work through step by step the answer and finally come out with the same answer, 28.01. And also it has written LaTeX as well to create these mathematical notations. So result, I would say Gemini, yes, and ChatGPT, yes. Let's move on to the next one. Here, multilingual capability. We haven't had time to run through this using our own test, but if we just look at the report, it didn't replicate all of these tests using different languages, but it did have a section on machine translation. And what we can see is that GPT-4 is still somewhat above Gemini Pro and just a tad below Gemini Ultra. So I would say that the two are probably neck and neck. But if I had to make a bet on moving forwards, who would have the model that performs the best in a variety of different languages, I would put my bet on Google. So results, I think both of these are pretty equal. Let's move on to our third test. Again, this one is from the report. So basically in the report, they ran through a bunch of standard benchmarks, like the MLU, which is a multiple choice set of questions across 57 subjects, math tests, Big Bench, a whole bunch of stuff. And the result is that Gemini Ultra has shown that it has pretty much matched GPT-4 across most of these, and in some cases have exceeded it. But I would say it's kind of neck and neck as well, because where it does exceed it is not by a huge amount, and in some cases GPT-4 still exceeds it. So I have to say, result, I think they're pretty much neck and neck, maybe with a small plus for Gemini. Now let's look at the next test. The context window. This is a really important attribute of transformer model because the context window affects not only how much it remembers from the dialogue that you're having, but also it affects how much of your own data you can feed into the model in a retrieval augmented generation pipeline. The larger the context is, the more you can feed your own books or documents into that window and have the LLM have access to that proprietary knowledge to respond to your questions. So this is very important. And in the Gemini report, it says that the Gemini models have a token windows of 32,000 tokens, and they've tested that the retrieval throughout the context length is above 98% accuracy. In some models that have very long context lengths, one of the problems that people have faced is that if you have some information in the middle of that long context, sometimes the LLM doesn't pick it up. What it's saying here is that it's 32K and that the retrieval is good pretty much across the entire context length. If we look at GPT-4, its production-ready models are also at 32,000, but the most recently released models like GPT-4 Turbo, which are not yet suited for production traffic, has 128,000 tokens. So in this tests, I would say that OpenAI is probably somewhat ahead here. I'll give it 2 pluses. But Gemini is also not doing too badly. Next test has to do with image understanding. It's the idea that you feed in an image. It could be things like infographics where there's a combination of text or even charts, and whether the models can extract the right information from it. And from the report, we can see that Gemini Ultra performs somewhat above GPT-4 Vision, and GPT-4 Vision is a little bit better than Gemini Pro. And at this point, because they have not released Gemini Ultra, all we can do is to test Gemini Pro and also run the same test against GPT-4 to see how they perform. In the next few tests, we have designed it ourselves. We have taken some slides in the public domain from the Boston Consulting Group to see if Gemini and ChatGPT can make sense of it. In this first test, we have a largely text-based slide which has a certain information hierarchy. So there are 5 strategic priorities to improve Melbourne's cultural offer. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then under each priority, there are some sub-points, but some of them are arranged horizontally, some are vertically. The test here is to see if they can extract the information hierarchy from an image. So the prompt is, can you turn this chart into text, ideally preserving the hierarchical relationships by using bullet points and sub-bullet points? So Gemini Pro did very well. It was able to call out the 5 priorities and also list all of the subpoints underneath it without flaw. Now GPT-4 also did very well with a small mistake. So it was able to list out these 5 priorities as well as the subpoints, but it was missing 2 subpoints underneath 1. So we had to prompt it, say what happened to 1B and 1C, apologize for the oversight, and then corrected its result. And so the end result is pretty good. Our assessment here, I think we've got Gemini's doing well, and GPT-4 is doing well as well, but maybe a very small minus here, just a small mistake. In the second image understanding test, is going to be harder because in this BCG chart, it's got text, it's got a chart, and it's got labels on top of the chart. The prompt is, using the slide, can you tell me what rate the intact dog population is expected to grow at with no community intervention? This chart is a projection of dog population. So if the community did not do any spaying and neutering, then the intact population would grow like this, which is undesirable. And this black line here is at the current levels of spaying and neutering, the population would grow slightly, but it doesn't reduce it. And then these are some projections of if they did 12,000 spaying and neutering surgeries yearly, what the chart would look like, etc. And this is our first prompt question. We will have 2 other prompt questions as we go down this. This test is a little bit long. First question, Gemini Pro. The slide you sent shows an estimated growth rate of 15% for the intact dog population, which is correct. And it gave me a bunch of other information, so that's a pretty good result. ChatGPT 4 also did the same. The intact dog population is expected to grow at 15%, as indicated by the green line with the label 15%. I was able to see this line, which is excellent. They both did pretty well here, so very good and very good. The second question is, what is the growth rate at current levels of S/N? First, it needs to figure out what is S/N, and it's not quite as easy as the first question because they would have to identify that this line is the line that represents the current levels of S/N, but there is no growth rate label. So it would have to figure out all the dots on this line and then calculate the growth rate for itself. Let's see how they did here. So Gemini Pro said that the growth rate at current levels is minus 20%, which is wrong. And if we look at the code that it wrote to derive this, yeah, it's a bit weird. Now let's see what ChatGPT 4 did. The graph indicates that with current levels of spay-neuter, so it's good that it recognized S/N as being spay-neuter interventions, the intact dog population is maintaining rather than decreasing, as shown by the orange line that stays level. This suggests that the current levels of S/N are preventing from growing but not sufficient to reduce the intact population, which implies a growth rate of 0 at the current intervention levels. I have to say this answer is somewhat better. It was able to pull out this label, say prevent growth but not reducing intact population, but it incorrectly said that this line is orange. That part's good. This is good. This is wrong. This orange bit is wrong. This is good. And so what it did here to come up with a growth rate of 0 is just to derive it from the text. The text said that it's preventing it from growing, but it's not reducing. It just inferred that it's 0. I guess it's not entirely wrong, but it didn't derive the actual points off the chart and calculate it, which was what I was hoping it was going to do. This is mostly correct, but could have been better. Final task. For the chart on the right-hand side, can you turn that into code for me? Now, this is the ultimate test. It says, sure, here's the code. And that is not correct. Not correct. I had to tell it, there is a line chart on the right side of the slide. Can you turn it into a matplotlib chart for me? This is a Python library for plotting charts. And there we go. It managed to do it, though I think it incorrectly identified the current SN as being this one. So let's see why it might have done that. Well, it seems like both of them think that it's the orange line. Yeah, I think it just made that one up. Maybe they confused this label with this and failed to see this little pointer here. But anyway, the shape of this line doesn't really echo the original line. But it's also missing a ton of lines. So I asked, can you provide the rest of the lines? Sure, here's the graph. So it's okay, but I have to say it's not a full check mark there. ChatGPT 4. So in the first shot, it came back with this, which I think is not perfect. It didn't get the colors right, but I would say it's pretty good. You can see here that it plotted me the chart, but there's also this little thing here. If you click into that, you can copy the code. And I've basically copied and pasted the code into Google Colab, ran it. It ran flawlessly to get me this chart. End result, and that one I have to say, Gemini is probably this, and then ChatGPT is also is somewhat imperfect but better. In this round, ChatGPT is a little bit better. Now, this is a task in the Gemini report. Also image understanding and also chart related. So it says that Successfully solving this task shows the model's capability to combine several capabilities. One is the recognition of the functions depicted in the plots. So here we've got like sinusoidal and paraboloid charts. Second one is the inverse graphics to infer the code that would have been generated in the subplots. This one is quite similar to our previous one, which is they have to turn the graphics back into code. Finally, instruction following to put the subplots into their desired positions, and abstract reasoning to infer that the exponential plot must stay in its original place. So it's quite a lot of tests in this one. The prompt is write code to rearrange the subplots in the figure using the latest version of matplotlib. Put the 3D paraboloid, which is this one, on the top left, so one has to go here. Put the tangent function on the bottom right. For the remaining two subplots, one of them should stay in its original position and the other one should fill the last spot. First, describe what each subplot depicts and identify its current location. Then explain where the subplot should go in its new location. Last, write the full code for the rearranged version with the original color scheme. The response that Gemini came back with, the tangent plot got put here, this one got put here, and this one stayed in its original position, and then this one got moved here. It was able to identify the subplots as being, this is a sine wave, this is a tangent function, this is an exponential function, and this is a 3D paraboloid. And then it provided us with the code as well. Obviously, this did very well. Dun-dun. Now, if we go to ChatGPT 4, we're thinking, well, ChatGPT 4 was not natively trained with all of these capabilities. Can it really do it? Now, I think my expectation coming into this would be no, but let's see. The uploaded figure contains 4 subplots arranged in a 2x2 grid. Let's identify each subplot by its mathematical function. Top left, sine wave. Top right, tan x. Bottom left, it decreases rapidly, exponential or quadratic function. Or bottom right subplot is a 3D surface plot that looks like a paraboloid. And it will rearrange it. And then this is the code. And I chopped it off, but the code works fine because I copied and pasted it into Google Colab. And then this is what we got, which is pretty much exactly the same as Gemini. A big surprise here. Really excellent. So both of these did really well. Checks for both of them. Now the next test is to do with audio and video understanding. Some of the coolest demo videos that came out of Gemini was to do with its video understanding. This is an easy test because ChatGPT as of now cannot really support audio or video. These are the supported files that it can read. So it can do CSV, doc, JSON, PDFs, Python files, CSS files. It can do images like JPEG, GIF, and PNG. It can do compressed files. It can do Excel. But it cannot do audio and video. In this one, Gemini is definitely the winner and GPT-4 cannot do it. Now this one was another surprise to me. This one is an image generation interleaved with text. This was a test that was run in the report. In the Gemini report, the prompt goes something like this. Give me 2 ideas that I could do with these 2 colors. It provided this blue and yellow yarn as a one-shot learning example. It gave Gemini an example of what it wanted and then asked it a new question. So it taught Gemini that it should do this. First, identify the color of the yarns, blue and yellow. Then make a suggestion and then generate an image. And then make another suggestion and then generate an image. And then now this is the real question. Give me 2 ideas that I could do with these 2 colors. And the response was, I can see green and pink. How about a green avocado with pink seed, and it generated this image? Or a green bunny with pink ears, and it generated this image, which is pretty amazing. Now we repeated the same with Gemini Pro. I put in the image, give me 2 ideas I could do with these 2 colors, and then it came back with, hey there, based on the image you sent me, the 2 colors of yarn are blue and yellow. And it suggested a sunflower blanket and a beach bag. And some additional ideas. The possibilities are endless, but unlike in the report, it did not generate images for me. I prompted it by saying, can you show me images of what I can make? Certainly, here are some images of projects you can do with blue and yellow yarn, a sunflower blanket and a beach bag. So I have to say it did not generate the images, and also it didn't realize that the beach bag is not made of yarn. Gemini Pro is tick minus. Let's see what ChatGPT 4 did. With the 2 colors of yarn like the ones that you have, blue and yellow, there are 2 craft ideas you can consider. An amigurumi, this is a Japanese art of knitting or crocheting small stuffed yarn creatures. That's a really cute idea. I think that's a better idea than Gemini Pro gave me. Striped scarf or beanie. You can knit or crochet a striped scarf or beanie, alternating between the blue and yellow yarns. These projects, it also did not give me an image. Oh, please note that when I ran this test for both ChatGPT and also Gemini, I did not give it a one-shot learning example as the report did here. It was 0 shot. And I asked it for some images, and how terrific. It generated this image for me of a amigurumi bird and a striped scarf, both within the same image. I did not know that ChatGPT 4 can do interleaved image generation. I have to say I was pretty blown away by this, and this image looks terrific. I have to say Gemini did its job, but ChatGPT I thought really did very well. Next test, cooking one. Modality combination. What does that mean? Multimodal demonstrations often include a combination of text interleaved with a single modality, usually images. We demonstrate the ability to process a sequence of audio and images natively. So the input, there's no text input, just audio and images. The first prompt went something like this. They put in an image with some ingredients, 2 eggs and some vegetables, and the input audio was, what's the first step to make a veggie omelet with these ingredients? And then the model came back with outputting text, crack the eggs into a bowl and whisk them. And then the user came back and gave a second image, said, thank you for the instructions. I started making my omelet. Does it look ready now? And then the model came back. It looks like it's almost ready. You can flip it over and cook the other side. In this next turn, the user did not provide an image and just asked, why is it not ready? It's not ready because the eggs are still runny. And then the final step, the user provided an image of the finished omelet and said, what about now? It looks ready now. You can take it off the heat and serve it. This is obviously pretty good. Let's see what ChatGPT 4 did. I fed it the same image. By the way, ChatGPT's interface does not have the ability to input audio. We were not able to run exactly the same tests, but OpenAI does have pretty good APIs for audio transcription. Yes, it can't do it, but it probably wouldn't take them too long to add that feature onto the interface. So I don't really see that as being a failure point, so to speak. The first step to make a veggie omelet with the ingredients shown, eggs, broccoli, tomato, and bell pepper, would be to prepare your vegetables by washing them and chopping them into bite-sized pieces. Blah, 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 beat the eggs and then put it in the pan. This response is much better than Gemini because it individually identified all of the ingredients and then gave you some more specific steps. whereas Gemini only told you to beat the eggs and whisk them. And it actually did not seem to see the vegetables. I have to say this one, OpenAI did better. I gave it the photo of the semi-cooked omelet. Thank you for the instructions. I started making my omelet. Does it look ready now? It looks like your omelet is well on its way. The eggs have begun to set and the vegetables are nicely distributed throughout. At this stage, you should check that the bottom of the omelet is golden brown, not sticking to the pan. If it's not ready yet, it will need a little bit more time to cook through. Remember to occasionally lift the edges. The cooking instructions are really a lot more detailed. I really like it. I asked the same question, why is it not ready? And it said that it's not completely set. Gave you some instructions on cooking it to low to medium heat to prevent it from burning. That's really good as well. And final step, the cooked omelet. What about now? It looks like your omelet is fully cooked. The eggs have set, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, other than the fact that the ChatGPT interface didn't allow me to put in audio, it was perfect. In fact, better than Gemini. I'm going to say that Gemini is check and a cross because it did not specifically reference the vegetables, whereas ChatGPT, I would give it a tick and a plus. I do know that it did not do the audio, but I'll give it some penalty scores under a different category. This is the final test. This is just recognizing that Bard, which is the consumer interface, underneath Bard is Gemini. The user interface is, I feel, somewhat better than ChatGPT. And there are 3 areas where it's better. The first is this. You can click on this speaker button to play text out loud. And you can use this microphone button to put audio in as opposed to writing text. It also has this one, which is if you wanted to verify this answer against search results, you can just click on this and it will assist you to do a Google search to verify. Whereas if you look at GPT-4, it does not allow you to play it out loud and there's no audio input. That's the end of our tests. Here's a summary of our tests, and I have to say that it is an imperfect test because in some cases we were using results from the Gemini report, whereas in other cases we were testing with Gemini Pro, and we were not able to replicate some of the tests with Gemini Ultra because it's not out yet. If we look down here, I'll just circle in blue all the areas where Gemini won, okay? So here, Gemini 1, here ChatGPT 1, here Gemini 1, let's see, this one, ChatGPT 1, this one, Gemini did better, this one, ChatGPT 4 did better, and the interface. Wow, we're pretty much neck and neck. What we can draw away from this is that ChatGPT 4 is still fundamentally a better LLM. The responses are better. It's actually pretty good at multimodality, in some cases even better than Gemini. However, where Gemini really stands out is its ability to do audio and video understanding, although we haven't really been able to put this to the test yet because that part hasn't even been rolled out yet. Also related to audio is that the user interface is somewhat better, but really it would take OpenAI 2 days to fix that on the UI. It's something that they can do for sure. Yeah, on benchmarks it did a little bit better, but I don't think that's really like a major game changer. We have not assessed it against some really important criteria, such as pricing. We also don't know what the Gemini API functionality is going to be like. Whether it will have any information retrieval or tool calling functionalities that makes integration with other pipelines easier, and also third-party tool integration. The API will be coming out on the 13th of December, so we'll try and test that. Please subscribe if you want to be the first to see it.